The following program is a co-production of Seattle Channel and Seattle City Club and sponsored by Comcast.
What if Seattle is dying and we don't even know it?
The documentary Seattle is Dying sparked a conversation.
How can I feel safe? Why can't I feel safe?
Many of my clients tell me, I don't want to use meth, but I can't sleep. There's nowhere safe for me to sleep.
But it also touched a nerve.
You've got everyone's attention, but now we have to come together and figure out how are we going to move forward.
As Seattle evolves, we're reminded change is good, right?
I'm empathetic to people who feel uncomfortable with change.
As a person who's frequently in a car, if you're someone who's frequently in a crosswalk, can you at least pretend jog through?
Oh yeah, give me that.
Don't even go faster.
I'm not going any faster, but I'm doing this exaggerated.
It's all coming up on Civic Cocktail.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a very special Civic Cocktail. Seattle dying or trying? I'm Joni Balter here tonight with formerly homeless Thea Oliphant-Wells, who now runs an opiate treatment clinic serving homeless people. Bill Dallman from KOMO News, he's the news director there, who oversaw the documentary Seattle is Dying, and Seattle City Attorney Pete Holmes. The journalists helping with the questions this evening, Angela King from KUOW, and John Carlson, KVI, and also now crosscut.com. Bill Dallman, we start with you this evening. We want to know the title. Why this title, Seattle is Dying?
Well, the story behind the title is that Eric Johnson, who is the brains behind this documentary, lived here for more than 2 decades, and whose idea spawned Seattle is Dying, came to me and he said, I have the title, Bill. And I said, okay. And he said, it's Seattle is Dying. And it took all the management training I had to say, okay, let me think about that for a while. But Eric's point, and I believe our point, is that to be impactful, you have to be bold. And this was a bold adventure from the start, a bold venture from the start, and we chose a bold title. It's not meant to be taken literally, but it's meant to be taken that the Emerald City, the city that we all love, the vision of what we want it to be, in some people's opinion, is dying, and what can we do to give it new life?
Well, let me just say, you're relatively new to Seattle, correct? Seattle has always had homeless people. The original Skid Road was here in Seattle. Many West Coast cities have large populations of homeless people. So why this now? What has changed?
Well, that's what Eric and our crews have found, is that this isn't the problem that we all are committed to confronting that traditionally we know. What we found was this is a new type of problem. This is a new thing. And Eric's point in the documentary is, how can we confront this thing if we don't call it what it is, which is drug addiction and criminal behavior and people taking advantage of those in society who do what they're supposed to do. That's what the documentary gives voice to. Those are the people we give voice to.
But Pete Holmes, does the documentary conflate crime, substance abuse, and mental health? And is that unfair in some ways?
That is the central problem. This documentary, if we can call it that, did touch a nerve. I share it.
That was kind of a dig. You meant it's an opinion piece? Is that what you meant?
I'm sorry?
If you want to call it that?
Right. I mean, this is, one of the things that we have to remember is that we all live in this city and work in this city, and I see the same things that we all see. And we're all frustrated that we have people that are unsheltered, living on the streets without the services that they need. And it is a growing problem. That said, the conflating of the problems, the superficial analysis has actually, I think, made the strategies for managing the problems more elusive. And that's one of the problems. So you've got everyone's attention, but now we have to come together and figure out how are we going to move forward with workable strategies.
Well, Pete Holmes, would you agree that what we are doing now doesn't really work? A lot of people do not feel safe on these streets?
Not across the board. I mean, there are, ask the person newly resident at Mary's Place who's in job training, who's off the streets. We are getting victories. They are small, they're hard fought in some cases, but we are showing that proven methodologies work. And if the danger that I fear is that we might fall back into an old let's incarcerate and let's deal with drug problems. This is not just a drug problem. It's not just a criminal problem. We have to be mindful of that. And the real danger here, and this is why I hope that KOMO can be actually part of the solution, is to use this as a springboard to educate people about proven, effective strategies. The problem, Joni, is that we don't have enough of the resources we need. And if we take a left turn right now, we're going to actually go down a more expensive, less effective route. That is to try and jail homeless populations.
Thea, can you briefly tell us why you were living on the streets of Seattle 14 years ago?
I returned to Seattle after an arrest while I was living in San Diego. So yes, I was one of those people who are living homeless who had behavioral health reasons contributing to that. I had continued use and really struggled to find solutions.
How long were you homeless?
I would say on and off for about 1.5 years at that time.
You have since turned your life around rather dramatically. You earned a master's degree from the University of Washington, and you're now helping others beat drug addiction. The big question I'm sure everybody is wondering, what happened? What made you turn your life around that way? What was the catalyst for the big change?
For me, it was having not just one attempt at treatment, not just one place to go for help. I had a number of different opportunities to try different treatment modalities. As someone with opiate use disorder, I've been on Suboxone, on methadone, I've done detox and inpatient. I had the ability to try and try again. I had a landing place for me, which was our public health needle exchange program. In between my treatment attempts, I had a place where I knew people that cared about me, didn't judge me for my drug use, and I had that soft place to land and start over with trying to move forward in a new, healthier path.
Angela King.
Question for you, Ms. Oliphant-Wells. What was your impression of the documentary?
I have to admit I didn't watch the documentary.
That's okay, but you've heard enough about it to kind of understand.
I've read some of the responses. I've seen some of Eric Johnson's earlier work on the subject and made the choice not to watch this one.
Specifically based on what you've seen in his prior work? What criticisms would you have of his prior work then?
I don't want to speak too much to the program since I haven't seen it, but some of the language used to talk about people in my community is a problem for me. And so in my own self-care, I just try to avoid news that's really disparaging towards the people that are a population I identify with. So, yeah, I tend to avoid those painful
that
things.
Isn't disparaging, but go ahead, John.
Thank you, Joni. Hi there, Pete.
Hi, John.
Did you know? You knew. All right.
Uh-oh.
You mentioned using proven effective strategies, and that brings me to the case of one Francisco Calderon, who's been in the news lately. You've kind of picked a feud with the presiding judge over the municipal courts, Judge Ed McKenna, and you apparently helped made him into something of a folk hero, because Judge McKenna believed that Francisco Calderon, who had over 70 criminal convictions and assaulted a stranger on the streets, should be sent to jail. Your recommendation is that after all these convictions, Mr. Calderon didn't belong in jail. Can you tell us why someone with 72 criminal convictions who assaults a stranger on the streets should not be sent to jail?
He was sent to jail, John. And
Well, in spite of you, not because of you.
no, he had been in jail 50 days when the exchange came up. 50 days for a simple assault. Inexcusable and a shock to the victim, but fortunately no serious injury. The difference in this point, there's two issues, John. One is about the sentence itself, about whether it is in the best interest of public safety, and I submit that it was. KOMO did belatedly post my explanation about why we thought that our agreed recommendation from the probation department, from defense counsel, even from the arresting officers who said this person belongs in mental health court. For the first time in this man's history, he had agreed to mental health treatment. And so what would have happened on that day if our sentence had been agreed to? And it does seem that the judge changed his mind because of the KOMO cameras in the room. That's a very concerning thing for me. But if he had been released that day into treatment, supported with housing, treatment, agreement to random UAs, mental health, and drug abuse treatment, I think he, for the first time, had a better chance, as Ms. Oliphant-Wells has said, of how many times does it take. This was the first time where he agreed he needed mental health treatment. Now, throwing the book at him for 364 days means that he's going to be out of the jail next month. He will be unsupported with housing. He will not have a case manager. He will not have an agreed treatment program. He will not be required to submit to random UAs, and we will have no suspended sentence to reimpose for his failure. All we're going to have to do is to wait for him to commit another crime. And I think that it's probably pretty inevitable. That's what the 72 convictions proves, is that putting him in jail did not work. So I submit that our recommendation was the better one, both from a rehabilitation standpoint as well as for public safety.
How does that explain 100 people with 3,500 criminal cases? You're just recycling these people.
Okay. Go ahead, answer,
Sure.
and then I want to move on.
I agree. Prolific offenders are a problem across our country. And one of the problems, John, that we're facing here, and I think that everyone in this room needs to appreciate, as long as we keep pretending that the criminal justice system is the right place to address public health problems, we're going to continue to get these kinds of outcomes and continue to wonder why. It's called the definition of insanity.
Bill, Bill wants to jump in here, so come on.
Certainly. And I mean, obviously, the city attorney, has learned about this, discussed it, strategized with it his entire career. What we've found is that, respectfully, sir, that is not what your constituents are asking for. The people who are outside, who are living in the community, who are, facing the issues and problems on a daily basis, are not asking for strategic thought about these folks. They want to know, how can I feel safe? Why can't I feel safe? And why is it that someone with a prolific record wouldn't be, punished, incarcerated? And I'm, again, surmising what they said. And they feel like there's a giant social experiment going on with their money at society's expense.
Here's what part of the polarization in this city, this community, this county seems to be, if you arrest homeless people for a variety of different actions, you're criminalizing homelessness. The other side says, if you don't arrest these people, you're soft on crime. Does it seem like just this way of looking at it is failing us in handling this?
Police can certainly make an arrest anytime they witness a crime. And that remains true. There is no blanket prohibition against prosecuting a homeless person just because they're homeless. If they've committed a crime, we consider the charges. We prioritize violent crimes, #1 in my office. The biggest volume of those 100 cases you were talking about, John, were mostly shoplifting cases. And that is our #1 crime in our, that's filed by our office. Theft by volume is the #1 crime, but we prioritize and get to those crimes against the person first. And so those are dealt with seriously. We take them seriously. There is no automatic get out of jail free because of homelessness.
Thea, I wanted to bring you back into this. When you and I met, we had a little pre-meeting here. You said that when you kicked your drug habit, you didn't think that you'd want to become a cliche, and somehow the cliche was that you would then get back into the business this time on behalf of King County, working with people in the same troubles that you had. But you did go that route anyway.
I did, yeah. As a person new in recovery, I thankfully had held on to the goals and dreams that I discussed with my social worker at the Needle Exchange, Adrian, and knew that I wanted to go to school. Most people I knew new in recovery were going to school to be counselors and to work in the substance use disorder field. And my friend and I said, we're not going to do the cliche thing that everyone else is doing. And I became a social worker, and here I am working in the SUD field. So, I mean, you can't push the river sometimes, as they say.
Push the river. Angela.
Question for Ms. Oliphant-Holmes as well as the city attorney. MAT program, which was something that was introduced in the documentary, the medication-assisted treatment programs that are offered to inmates while they are serving their time. They are offered drugs that will help them kick the habit. And you mentioned some of those. What do you think about the MAT programs, and should we consider them more here? In fact, Whatcom County, the Whatcom County Jail, just announced that it is going to introduce that program for its inmates. Do you think they're effective, and do you think that there's something we should take a closer look at on the Seattle City level?
I absolutely think that we should be offering people treatment if they're in jail. I don't necessarily think the science doesn't lead us to locking people up in order to offer treatment as a solution. That is a very costly way to go about it, and the science hasn't shown that to be successful, so I wouldn't recommend that. But if you have people who are going to be in jail who have opiate use disorder, absolutely. We should be taking advantage and offering medications. I mean, part of what I do as a harm reductionist is meet people where they're at. If people are in jail, I should be meeting them there. And King County Jail is working on having a Suboxone program where they'll actually be starting people on medication in jail and transferring to community clinics. One thing I want to mention is people want treatment. I mean, there isn't like we need to convince people that drugs are bad and they want to change. People genuinely are seeking treatment every single day, and the barriers to that treatment is what's getting in the way, not their addiction. Most of the time, people are living outside, they don't have a phone that's charged with an alarm, their brains are compromised by trauma and lack of sleep and the drugs that are on board. And for one thing, methamphetamine doesn't have a medication-assisted treatment, and that is a drug that's on the rise in our community. We have a lot of people who are finding great success in medication-assisted treatment programs for their opiate use, but we don't have treatment that's tailored towards stimulant use. And part of using meth, many of my clients tell me, I don't want to use meth, but I can't sleep. There's nowhere safe for me to sleep. And if I just stay up, then I'm going to be okay. And I'm not going to have my stuff stolen or my body violated. And that's a very real part of what's happening in our culture here, people living outside and stimulant use really being about survival.
Bill Dallman, KUOW, and there's a whole lot of KUOW here tonight, reported that Seattle prosecuted people for stealing from Goodwill more than any other retailer. Almost 1 in 3 of folks arrested were homeless. In other words, the story suggests that police are arresting almost too many homeless people. How does that line up with your documentary?
Well, I believe, we believe that Seattle is Dying is not about homeless people. It's about society and what's happening to it, and people who are not willing to, unlike you, Thea, that aren't willing to get treatment, aren't willing to do things that the rest of us all do. And what we're seeing from the comments in Seattle Times, in Crosscut, in every other kind of publication is, please make it safe for those of us who do the right things. Let's focus our attention on that. I don't think Seattle is Dying is not about homelessness or someone who's had a bad break or, you know, is working 3 jobs and living in a car. It's more about the people who take advantage of the rest of us and giving a voice to those people. That's what we set out to do. And again, it wasn't traditional. You know, the traditional approach is, you know, you hear from folks and then we bring them to the city attorney and he comments and we, you know, do a balanced news story, which we do every single day. But this was designed to do something very different, and the reason why is because, you know, city officials can hold a news conference anytime they want. You know, there's always an opportunity to address new and improved ways to deal with this crisis. But we wanted, part of our responsibility is to give a voice to people who feel like they don't have a voice. And if you read those comments and if you listen to what people are saying in our community, I think you'll hear a boiling frustration and questioning of whether or not the same old remedies are working.
Pete, where is Travis? And for folks who've seen the documentary, you all know who Travis is, but for those of you who haven't, he's the man in the documentary who flagrantly says he loves meth, and he seems sort of boastful about his new career as a thief.
I understand that Travis is in jail. He is awaiting trial, I believe, on felony charges for property destruction. And I'd like to take that opportunity to point out this is one of the many failings of this piece, is that there are, I can't tell you the number of people have called me, why aren't you charging heroin cases? And I say, that's a felony. I only charge misdemeanor cases. Robbery is the same. Burglary, these are all felonies.
Okay, yeah, explain there's a difference between Seattle prosecutors and King County prosecutors.
County and some federal prosecution as well for drug crimes especially. But, you know, the point is, Mr. Johnson, the day before this was released, contacted my office to explain why we recommended a particular sentence in a felony case. And we had to say, sir, we don't do felonies. That was the first time he contacted our office. And if he'd been working on it for 2 years and missed that, he missed other things, like you would think that the entire SPD is disgruntled and ready to walk. Well, and you just overlook, I've just got to get out the fact that the crisis response team is something that you could have talked about. These guys talk to these officers when they're going along a NAV team cleanup. You'll never find more enlightened, intelligent, and compassionate professionals. And they're here in the Seattle Police Department doing this work.
Well, to your point, and I must say, I'm going to preface this by saying I really don't like it when journalists spend a lot of time critiquing other journalists, because we could do that all day. It's smug, it wastes time, and it accomplishes nothing. But that said, can I just have one about your method, because it speaks to something Pete said. I do wonder about the liberal use in the documentary of anonymous police officers. So would you tell us how many officers were in the survey, and sort of how credible a sample was that?
I don't have the exact number that were in the survey.
Like 3, or was it a real survey that was
50?
More than what?
More than 50, and they were, you know, largely the same, I think, frustration in that, you know, we heard from the officers, we're here to protect and serve. We want to help. That's why we're here, and we feel like we're hamstrung. We feel like, you know, it's a rinse and repeat cycle of, we go out, we find people who are, you know, breaking laws, civility cases, etc., and they're just recycled right back on the streets again, and they're frustrated too. So, I mean, add their voices to all of our voices about how is it that we can get our society back functioning again to the point where we all feel safe and productive.
We have 1,400 officers. You talk to 50 of them.
So we have an audience question, and she used to be my boss, so we kind of have to let her talk.
Mr. Dallman, I just wanted to check something I think I heard you say. First, that the citizens of Seattle don't want strategic thought about this from our leaders. We just are frustrated and want action. So I just wanted to see if you want to comment on that. And then the second thing is you mentioned that, you know, we don't want experimentation. We're living in a social experiment. We won't want that. And yet you also said that the methods that we have are tired and not working. So how do you innovate with methods if you don't experiment with new things? Thanks.
Well, I think what I tried to articulate is what we heard in Seattle is Dying is that the methods that we're trying now are not working. And I believe we all have referenced that at some point, is that's the feeling. I am no expert. I am a journalist. We give voice to the people who are telling us these things. They see the strategies. They hear, you know, how someone like a Calderon could be dealt with. And again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that they are not feeling like you're understanding or listening to what it is they have to say. And Seattle is Dying gave voice to those people, and I think we should all think about that.
From my perspective, we have some really amazing, innovative work that's happening here in Seattle. The LEAD program being one example, which, if taken to scale, can really have an enormous effect on how people are recovering and feeling and being treated and engaging in health. I am running a law enforcement assisted diversion. It diverts low-level offenders from jail and criminal justice into social service settings, working with a case manager, someone who can help them make their court dates and become more civic responsible and, you know, get an ID card and work on their housing and employment goals, connect with mental health or SUD treatment. If they're not ready for those things, work on other ways to get healthier and to engage with a care provider. For people like me who have been so marginalized and really seen as less than human in the community, having harm reductionist, a case manager that's there and seeing you as a real and valuable person, it's really hard to listen to you talk about, you know, there's these worthy people, and then it's like these people who don't follow the rules.
John Carlson, I know you're going to have a cow if I don't call on you.
Well, the Eric Johnson special was the third in a trilogy. The first was about the homeless, called There But for the Grace of God. And it was about the homeless in the words of the homeless. It was the homeless from their perspective. The second was about heroin and what it has done to people. And again, it was about heroin at ground level. The third was about a subset of the homeless, and that was people who are all about heroin culture and are homeless as a result. And that leads me to the question I'd like to ask you,
I'm so glad
Thea.
there's a question there.
The first is well, I think that context needed to happen. First of all, congratulations, because I'm on the board of the Salvation Army. I know how incredibly tough it is to pull yourself out of a situation like this, so congratulations.
Thank you.
The question I have for you is, the special was about people who didn't want to get off drugs. You said people do want to get off drugs. Some don't. So what do you do about people who don't want rehab, who don't want to stop using, and who don't want to go to a shelter because it has rules?
Okay.
The most appropriate interventions, the evidence-based interventions that I carry with me in working with active drug users that are in pre-contemplative state of change, would be motivational interviewing and harm reduction strategies. Health education, seeing the person as worthy of love and respect and care, engaging with them without judgment. I mean, these are the things that helped me to identify my own humanity, which helped me find, you know, what I needed inside of myself to recover. I mean, these are the evidence-based treatments, if you will, for someone who's not ready to change their drug use behavior. Most of the people that use the needle exchange, when we survey, and we do it every 2 years, say that they want to change their drug use. We need to have people who are poised to partner with them and build trusting relationships that are psychologically safe. It's really difficult when the only care that you come into contact with has one way that they will help you and not others. And that really is damaging for people who are struggling. Most people that I see have a huge amount of trauma. Their cognitive functioning is impaired by both the trauma of their lives and the drug use that's happening. And it's really hard to do A, B, C, and D to get the care that you need without someone who's walking that path with you.
Audience, we're running out of time, so I want to get a few.
No worries, thank you. First of all, Thea, I want to say thank you for your testimony here. I think it's always important to acknowledge that there's a big difference between being a voter and a community member thinking about these issues and someone who has gone through them. So thank you for doing this. My question to Bill is, you talked about a little that Seattle is Dying was not about homelessness, but more about, like Thea said, these people that are unworthy, or more about people who are fed up. And my question is, do you know of these 100 prolific offenders who are all experiencing homelessness, do you know how many of them are themselves victims? And is that part of their story important to include? And do you feel like you missed that in Seattle is Dying?
Interesting question. I mean, I just know that we're focused on the perpetrators, if you will, and the question that's being asked is why, if they're not willing to participate in these amazing programs, why are they allowed to continue to disrupt society? That was the overwhelming narrative that we received and the reason that it became what it became. You know, we did not delve into their backgrounds and those types of things, but more giving voice to the people saying, you know, wonderful that we have programs, they're great, but what about the people that literally are taking advantage of the rest of us, that aren't following the rules, that aren't doing what they're doing, aren't supposed to do? They're wrecking what was an amazing, beautiful place. That's what they were saying to us.
Pete, what parts of the frustration expressed in the documentary ring true to you?
As I said at the outset, I share the frustration in the visual impact, certainly.
I want you to be way more specific.
Sure. You know, when you see that encampment come back that has just been cleaned up within hours, that is frustrating. You know, but it goes beyond just the, you know, landscaping issue. I'm talking about the fact that there's someone who turned away services again and again, and we need to try and aggregate the data for each person as we start to build a relationship with them. And the biggest frustration I have is we may have a shelter bed to offer them, but we don't have housing that is going to be supportive. We don't have something to match up with the programs that Thea's talking about. And so that's a real frustration because we can go and sweep if you want, although the federal judge will shut us down pretty quickly. By the way, I have to defend the lawsuit that is pending right now that would stop all of these cleanups. I defend that in the federal district court here. That's one thing it's not even touched on in the KOMO piece, or the Involuntary Treatment Act, or mental health. No mention of it in the entire piece, and that's a tremendous disservice. And so my frustrations are with that, is what was missing from the story, that we need to all understand this better, all the different actors. That's why I'm so grateful. I want to end on a positive note, Joni, and that is, you know, the mayor's convening a working group that's including...
Yeah, how helpful do you think that is, that task force?
It's wonderful.
Does it really change it? I'd like to hear from both of you, actually, on that.
Yeah, I think that you're going to see wonderful things. I know that I learned from Thea that, you know, county health is expanding programs, although they still need supportive housing. I'm working closely with Dan Satterberg. I'm working closely with the mayor's office, with SPD. We are all working very hard to try and figure out what can we do. This work was going on before this documentary came out, and it's certainly gotten renewed attention.
The task force seems to have been
The task force was in response.
That's
true.
But
what we're doing is more focused work under the leadership of Mayor Durkin, and I support that very much. It's going to take all of us. One person didn't cause this. One person's not going to fix it. It's going to take a village, literally.
I have time for a reasonably short question and a reasonably short answer.
Hi, my name's Angie, and I'm here from Ballard. I have a question for City Attorney Pete Holmes. Last week, you had a very critical letter of Presiding Judge McKenna from the Municipal Court. And that letter made a lot of assumptions and had some incorrect information in it. I'm part of a group called Speak Out Seattle that was named in it and had nothing to do with the situation. And there were assumptions made about the reporter and the private citizen named. I don't understand. The letter felt like a media stunt. I don't understand how it served the public. Can you speak to that?
Sure. One of the things, while I can't speak to, for instance, Thea's expertise and what it takes to help treat and to deal with some of these subjects, what I do know is the incredible need here in Seattle, in Washington, D.C., in an independent judiciary. Now, that letter came after numerous private meetings attempting to change some behavior that, in my mind, was threatening the appearance of the impartiality of our Seattle Municipal Court. I feel extremely strongly about that. That's why that letter went out. And the only mistake was the Speak Out Seattle. It's actually Safe Seattle. And if you go to that website, you can see the kind of hatred that is spewed on that site. So we do have, we had information. Dan Nolte, my communications director, is here. We have an email from Lisa Dugard that said that Mr. Markovich.
And he had been following this case all along, as you know, and he was not invited by the judge.
Okay, I'm just saying that our evidence is an email that Dan Nolte can give you from Lisa Dugard, the head of the Defender Association, that said that he told her that he had been invited to speak.
Well, you have to request to go into the court. So that part of it was incorrect.
And I need you guys to hold it kind of right there because I got to wrap this up. We have been discussing the Seattle is Dying documentary with Thea Oliphant-Wells, Bill Dallman, and Pete Holmes. We're coming back shortly with two smart guys from public radio, Luke Burbank and Bill Radke. And thank you. We are back with two highly informed, highly entertaining radio voices. Luke Burbank, you're pretty much on every NPR show that they have. But he hosts Livewire and the Too Beautiful to Live podcast. We have Bill Radke. He hosts the popular show The Record on KOW, which includes the Friday Week in Review. Yeah. Bill, you're an astute observer. Why do you think, you just heard all this here.
Seattle is dying.
Seattle's dying, but why do you think this documentary took off like this?
Wow, why did it take off? Well, I think the news director basically told you that if it had been made all murky with context, it would have been less powerful, right?
Or if the title was something like homelessness, what are we going to do about it? Would that have had that impact?
Well, I'm serious. It's kind of a hard thing that, first of all, the producer of the documentary, Matt Markovich, came on my show, very gracious. John Carlson referred to other stuff KOMO has done that might have been great. We're just talking about this one documentary. Right. I called it a documentary, and I got some, on KOW, I got some guff because people said it's not a documentary.
Well, that's what Pete Holmes said. Pete Holmes said it's an opinion piece, and you can have documentaries that are opinion pieces.
Yeah, I thought of it as like a documentary, like Bowling for Columbine is a documentary. Yeah. But a documentary, I don't think documentaries are objective. I think they have a point of view. Yes. And I think they would admit that the point of view in this show was of people who don't understand the issues and don't care to. That was the privileged point of view. And they may have done other wonderful things, but do you disagree? That's kind of what this hour was about.
You travel the country a lot, Luke. Is Seattle dying?
I want to start by saying I think I misread the email inviting me on the show. I thought this was for a documentary called Seattle is Frying about the best chicken in Seattle.
We're rhyming too here,
and I did not prepare for this.
Not just you.
It's also good to finally get some white people on stage. I think we can all.
Thank you.
Good.
We tried really hard.
Finally get our point of view expressed. I travel all over the country and I see a lot of different cities, and I would say that Seattle is thriving. I mean, based on what I see in the rest of the country. Yeah. Like, Seattle is a vibrant city, and Seattle is dealing with a whole variety of issues that a lot of other cities are dealing with. And I mean, if you have spent any time on like Skid Row in LA, as I have, reporting a piece there years ago, I will, you know, block for block, Skid Row will give anything in Seattle a run for its money, and this is in Los Angeles. A lot of West Coast cities deal with this stuff. I don't think there's anything that Seattle is doing I don't think Seattle is doing anything uniquely wrong. I think Seattle is just trying to deal with a very complicated problem.
Is it dealing with it well?
Well, I think geography has to do with it, weather has to do with it. You go to certain cities where it gets really cold in the wintertime, and that kind of like has a natural effect of containing certain things. You go to other places where they take a much more, as we saw in the KOMO piece, a more sort of penal approach to things by locking people up, kind of broken windows approach. I mean, I'm just saying that, like, I grew up in Seattle. My wife and I live now in Bellingham, but we come to Seattle all the time. I see a lot of other cities. I just think Seattle is a great, amazing place. The idea that it's dying is just not does not square with my experience at all.
So that doesn't mean we need to get A+s to the public officials, because there are problems and there's misery and people victimizing other people. Like, I'm not saying it. How dare you give voice to these people? Matt told me on my show we touched a nerve. It's just that that's kind of the least journalism can do, is to touch nerves. I hope we can do better.
And get people talking about it. It seems in some ways, and I'd be interested to hear how you all feel about this, that Seattle is dying is part euphemism for Seattle is changing. And why are Seattleites so freaked out about changing?
I mean, why is any city in America I mean, you go to Manhattan and you walk around Soho or the Lower East Side and you see places that used to be like machine shops and factories, and now they're clothing stores that sell one T-shirt. I don't know what the business model is. What happens when you sell the shirt? I guess you close.
It's a pop-up store.
You have to keep walking. They have a second T-shirt.
I mean, like American cities change, and I think that when you're used to, you know, I grew up in Seattle in the 80s. I grew up at 77th and Aurora. I'm still over Chubby and Tubby closing.
Me either.
I mean,
Me either.
So
I live in the South End. Chubby Tubby, I'll never get over.
I mean, I just think it's a sort of.
I could go twin teepees on you if you really want to. Like, what are we doing here? Are we throwing down? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if history smiles on twin teepees as a
fair enough
physical business
fair
model.
Enough. Yes.
But I just think that it's, you know, when we're used to things being a certain way, and then when they change, I just think it's challenging. But I think it's too easy to act like it's because nobody cares or because the city officials who, Bill, you're right. I mean, they're not doing everything right. But the idea that this is unique to Seattle, or that this is because of some colossal screw up by one person or government entity, I just think that's a little bit short-sighted.
Yeah. The bad people. Everybody needs to find the bad people. But you asked about Seattle changing.
Yeah, why are we so freaked out about it?
I mean, isn't that humanity? I'm empathetic to people who feel uncomfortable with change. But I've heard people say, like, I don't even know, I'm in Ballard and I don't even know where I am anymore. It doesn't seem like Ballard. Isn't that why you travel? Like, that seems fun to me, to be trying to keep up with what's new. I'm just not, that's not my constitution to be so bothered by change. But you know, I can find it. Anything that frustrates me about other people, I can find in myself. Change is hard.
When I was a young, like maybe late teens guy, I worked at a plumbing company in Greenwood. And they would send me down to like Ballard Hardware, King's Hardware, to get actual hardware. Now it's a bar. It is so much more fun as a bar. Like, way better as a bar.
Growth is good, Bill, right?
Growth is good?
Yeah.
If you're cancer, it's good. I mean, like, growth is good. Is anything always good? Right. I think personally that's
kind
one
of
the
a
things,
belief that, oh, we're growing, we're the fastest growing city, we're the fastest rent rising, blah,
I
blah,
hear
blah.
that all the time, that if you're not growing, you're dying. And I'm not smart enough, I'm not a public planner enough to really know, like, why is growth always a good thing? That seems to be what Chamber of Commerce and what politicians want, but you know, if you want it, congratulations, it comes with problems. And I think that unsettles people in Seattle. That I've been here since the 80s, and I think we used to have the feeling that we're there was sort of a utopian vibe, like we're going to do it better, we're going to be in a city, so we're going to have arts and we're going to have culture and we're going to have commerce and go, but we're not going to take it too seriously, we're not money grubbing, we're going to get out in the mountains and on the water. And now I feel like we've drunk the Kool-Aid and grow, and we're kind of just another boomtown. And I think that's a little depressing.
That's a little sad to be, quote, just another boomtown.
Even though I personally, it's way more fun. We're going to go out to, you know, a good restaurant after this.
Don't tell them, because it's just going to be a monster.
Which restaurant?
Twin Teepees.
Yes, unfortunately.
You know, when I was growing up in Seattle, it was a very working class place, or at least much more so than now. And I think a lot of the tension around the growth in Seattle is that the kind of industries that occur here now, and the folks that come to work in those industries in terms of their educational background, it's different. It's not the blue-collar town it was. Well, I was recently in Cleveland, a blue-collar town that stayed being blue-collar. And I'll tell you, I'll take what Seattle is doing right now. Like, you know what I mean? Seattle is growing. That brings a lot of problems with it. But if you go see the alternative places where there is you know, a lack of that sort of thing developing, I think it's a much worse option.
But is that the alternative? That would be a good, I'm giving myself a KOW, you know, segment idea. Is the alternative to growth stagnation, or, you know?
Yeah, because you're referring to a town that is not well admired like that, right? So
is there somebody who's playing it just right?
You radio guys are good at providing.
Also, is this show on in Cleveland?
Right.
Because I would like to retract that statement if it is.
Well, you guys are good at serving up the segues here. So let's do it like this. 20 years ago, Seattle compared to now, which was better? You know, kind of like the eye doctor. Better or worse?
Now.
Now is better?
Now is better.
Why?
But, well, because I have a job and I'm comfortable and I get to, I like change, and there's just more. I like more arts institutions, and I like more restaurants, and I like more going on. I'm in the news business. Doesn't mean it's better for everybody. It's just, there's no definitive answer. You have to be subjective.
Compare it to 20 years ago. You like it better or you don't?
Well, you know, when I was living here as a kid, the Mariners played in the Kingdom. If you were one
I
of the
used
first,
to take books to read.
Yeah, if you're one of the first 9 people there, they let you play.
You actually could be an infielder. That's true. That's a true story. Yeah. That's a true story. You could play infield.
It was actually, so I mean, that part I missed.
Wait,
yeah, we're back to it, Rose. Okay. We are now back to that. So my point is, it doesn't have to be either or. We've now returned to that state of baseball team having.
So some things we say about ourselves are probably no longer true. The Seattle Freeze, right or trite? I'm looking at you, Bill.
They've talked about the Seattle Freeze since I got here in the 80s, and it mattered to me then because I was trying to date, and it was hard to break through. But we were talking about it in the office today. Is the Seattle Freeze real? Are we antisocial? What if we are antisocial? Maybe that means I'm good. Maybe that means I have everything I need and I'm not needy. Maybe that's good. But I think from everybody I talk to, they say it's a real thing, so I believe them. I just don't know. I'm married and kids, and it's different for me. What would be the causes of the Seattle Freeze now compared to then? As it seems like it would have changed a lot, but I've heard this for decades.
Seattle Freeze, real or?
I mean, I don't know how you actually sort of track something like that and prove whether it's real or not.
I didn't expect you to have data. I'm just...
Well, I was here to talk about fried chicken, Joni. So this is all flying by the seat of my pants.
Let's hear about the chicken.
I will tell you this. My mom is from Philadelphia, and my mom talks to everyone she sees. My parents live here in the Seattle area, and it is weird. It is super weird. Yes, it is embarrassing, and I'm like, why are we talking to this person in QFC right now, Mom? We're just trying to get some food. So, I mean, honestly, most of the time I'm fine being in my own little world as I'm doing things. So if that's the Seattle Freeze, I mean, I feel like I can live with that.
Yeah, I got to agree. Why so judgy about it? Everybody got to be happy, you know.
So happy and friendly. What about Seattle Nice? Is that old Seattle, or do we still wait for the walk signal?
Oh,
not
the
so
walk
much.
signal. Oh, are we merging into zipper merge here? Because now we're in traffic land.
You're good at this. You're good. You should maybe do a radio show. Or
I was one of the old school wait for the walk signal. Definite rule follower.
In the middle of the night.
But I don't think that really goes anymore, right? People are that's old. That's old school. I'm kind of happy to see that go. If you jaywalk strategically, you're not in anyone's way. I'm okay with it.
I like that in the Seattle area, I think most cars are forced to be, not everybody, most people are pretty observant of the crosswalk if somebody's in the
Except
crosswalk.
for the people on the telephone, not so observant.
Here's what I'm asking, though, as a person who's frequently in a car, if you're someone who's frequently in a crosswalk, can you at least pretend jog through it?
Oh, yeah. Give me that.
Don't even go faster.
I'm not going any faster, but I'm doing this exaggerated.
Like a little body language.
Well, that is
like,
the first dance we've had on Civic Cocktails, so thank you very much.
That's a good call.
So you can't be restrained. Do tell us, we're talking about how people get around in the traffic. Do tell us what is the zipper merge and why are you so into it?
This is a Seattle change that is good thing, people. Come with me. Come with me. You're on a road where there are 2 lanes and it's going to turn into 1. Okay, one of them is going to disappear. You are very nice. God bless you for trying to quickly jump into the lane that's not going to disappear because you're going to queue up and wait your turn. But it's bad civic planning. Use all the pavement that there is. That's what it's for. It doesn't matter that you're cutting in line. It's a few seconds different, and you're all going to get there. Go as far as you can in whatever lane you're in, and then at the end, it's very polite. It's very neighborly. 1-1. You zipper merge. 1-1-1-1, and wave.
The group of people.
Wave. Thank you. Wave.
The group of people, though. The people you're really talking to with this speech is not the mergers, but the people who are like
seething.
Emerson Fittipaldi. I try to keep my racing references current. Who are like amazing. Thank you. Who are amazingly skilled at keeping their car exactly parallel to whoever's trying to merge.
Yes, because they are the pace car. Yes.
Those are because everyone wants to merge. The issue is not people.
Who is that? Who is that person here?
Right?
I'm trying to merge, and you're so mad because I might be a half a second ahead of you and you were there first, so you're just going to roll and not look at me, but you're just going to roll, pretending not to see me.
I would say 60% of those cars have a public radio sticker.
Fair enough. Fair enough. These are my. I was you. I was where you are now.
The person who's not letting in may be one of your favorite public radio
Speaking
hosts.
of Philadelphia, and I was where you are now. So my former boss and very good friend, former executive editor of the Seattle Times, Dave Boardman, moved away from Seattle 5 years ago. And he came back to visit, and you know Dave Boardman. And he said, I noticed that people in Seattle who drive their cars are honking more.
Yeah.
And then this whole sort of Twitter thing happened, and everyone was blaming the tech bros. Is that fair?
Oh, I honked on the way here.
All the way here?
Yeah. I promise you,
you're not a tech bro.
Physically honking is far too rudimentary for a tech bro. There is an app they have an app that they can hit that just makes you feel bad in the other car. I mean,
they're all about efficiency, those coders.
There's absolutely no way.
Disruptors.
And also that would assume they're driving their own car. They're in some kind of automated cube. That's making its way around the town. So I mean, also there are a lot of places where the horn is used as a very effective way, not out of anger, but just like if you've ever driven.
Safety, sometimes, but sometimes it's like, get out of my way.
Yeah, but a lot of times it's just to kind of echolocate, like a bat.
Sonar coming back.
Just bounce it. How far away is that Prius? How far away is that Subaru Forester?
Speaking of tech, is anyone here at Amazon or some tech company, can we not have a dashboard that you can differentiate between the lights turned red, I love you, but I'm letting you know, versus I hate you, or whatever. Why do we only have one choice? And you just have to be either, you hope that you're light on the telegraph horn usage and not leaning too heavy. Why don't we have more choices? There's a CBS commentary for you. What's up with the honking?
Yeah, I'll look right into that.
Yeah, I would get into that. Okay, so we're talking about change here a lot. What do you think is the impact on Seattle of Amazon? We've been Amazoned. Good, bad, and different.
Amazon is huge. Amazon is software developers and people in HR, and I mean, the idea that it's one tech bro that you can picture is absurd. So do you have some good stereotypes? Because I'll yield to you. Because I don't have any. It seems like 1 billion people to me.
I did a TV commercial for Amazon. Okay. I said, The Amazon fire. That was me, not to brag. And
sounds like you're bragging.
It came on
totally
It came on during a Thanksgiving Day football game when the Seahawks were playing. I think it might have been the 49ers, and my whole family was gathered around. There's 7 kids in my family, huge, and my family heard me say, "The Amazon fire," and they broke into applause. So it was the proudest moment of my life, and so Amazon's fine by me.
Wow.
That's it.
Okay.
What about Amazon?
That's my honest answer. I gave you my honest answer.
What
and
about
also,
Amazon
I
moving?
order stuff from them constantly, despite my better judgment.
Why do you need stuff today or tomorrow?
Because otherwise you don't have the instant gratification.
Yeah. I need stuff before I actually even thought of it, which is where I'd like to
That's the future.
Yeah, just some shoes show up at my house and Amazon like, we thought you'd like these.
What do you both make of Amazon sort of quietly or a little less quietly moving all these jobs to Bellevue?
To Bellevue?
So they had 6,500 jobs. Bellevue Mayor John Schulmanak told me that. But that was 2 weeks ago. And if you read the business page, you'll notice they just bought like another building or 2 or 3. Yep. What do you make of that? Is Bellevue the center of the known universe or something?
Bellevue, I want you to watch a future documentary called Bellevue is Dying. I want to picture that. Is that what you want, Bellevue?
Yeah. Look, I've said it once, I'll say it again. These bros ain't loyal.
No, and they honk. They honk way too much.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, no, I don't want a lot of seriousness, but does the move mean that Amazon loves Seattle a little less, or we're over a little over?
Amazon is not a person. They are a company, and you're not entitled to them in your town. And if they stopped, I'm a big Lime Bike fan, and Lime Bike, has anyone noticed they just stopped maintaining their bikes? It's like everything I go to, this bike I scan, this bike is being maintained. This bike, his battery is too low. All the non-battery bikes are gone, and I had this feeling of like, God damn, thanks a lot, Lime Bike. Yeah. They're a private company, and they will do what they will, and you just got to meditate, people. Amazon.
I mean, look, Boeing moved to Chicago how many years ago?
Right.
And when Bill and I were collaborating on his show Rewind on KUOW, I remember there was a joke circulating that when the Boeing executives said they needed to move to Chicago so they could be more centrally located to all the businesses in America, on our show we said, if only there were some metal bird that flew through the sky that would help you get to those places.
Vast, great distances.
That would be amazing. So, this is going to happen. Companies are going to flourish, and they're going to decide to do what makes the most sense for them, and that's just kind of how it works.
You know those time-lapse photographs or videos of clouds forming and dissipating? That's life, right? The sky is changing. Seattle is changing. You're getting old. So am I. Amazon is changing. Boeing is moving. Get used to it.
This is like the best psychiatric session I've ever had.
It's like the circle of life. There is an arc to every retail location in Seattle. It starts out being whatever somebody's dream was. That fails. Then it becomes a karate dojo. Then that fails. Maybe pho for a year or two, and eventually the natural end state of any retail location, a vape store.
Vaping, I know.
But you have to be 21 to go to the vaping because we have a very busy legislature.
Oh yeah.
Did you not know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So Luke, real quickly here, what is the thing in Port Townsend this summer, and why is it so exciting? You're part of it.
I am.
Why couldn't you think of a better name?
Well, I did not name it. But
tell us about this.
So this is a big music and art and podcasting festival that's happening at Fort Worden. And it's going to have a whole bunch of,
It's like a bumbershoot light or something?
It's sort of. It's actually Adam Zaks from Seattle Theater Group who did the Sasquatch Festival for years. It's going to have amazing performers. De La Soul will be there, Violent Femmes, Jeff Tweedy.
Wow.
There you go.
Wow.
And
there's their
know,
fan.
Yes or no, does the record go on the road this summer? Because I got a rep.
Yeah, we're on the main stage at the thing, unless you have not emailed me back. Are we on?
My email's been being super crazy.
I gotta go, you guys. You keep talking amongst yourself.
Okay.
Because it's a wrap, folks. We have been talking about old Seattle, new Seattle, Seattle dying, Seattle booming, with Bill Radke and Luke Burbank. Thanks a ton for watching.
Thanks, Joni.
Come on, fun.